Hiya folks, in this video we're going to be changing the front discs and pads on this 2006 Vauxhall Signum. See you in a minute. Right, well it's time to change the front pads and disc on this Vauxhall Signum. It's pretty much the same as other Vauxhall ranges, perhaps the Vectra or something like that. So let's make a start, jack the front of the car up, and I've already taken the under tray off on this, so you may have to do that. I'm just going to jack the car up, put it on an axle stand, and then we'll get the wheel off. So let's do that now. Right, okay then, I've jacked it up. I've got an axle stand under there. I also like to leave the trolley jack under there just as a bit of support as well. I always give the car a good rock afterwards to make sure that it's secure. And I also put the driving wheel under the chassis as well. Belt and braces, but that's what I do. And as you can probably see here, this disc is well and truly worn. It's got a great big lip on it there, if you can probably see that. And obviously the pads as well, if you can see, are very, very low, so we're going to have to change all this here. And to do that, we've got to take the caliper off and the caliper holder. And we better make a start by first of all taking this spring off, undoing the two carrier bolts on the back here, and this should take the brake caliper away. We're then left with a carrier. Take two more bolts off, and then we can unbolt the single Allen bolt on there to withdraw the disc. So let's make a start on that. If you've never done a job like this before, it's always good to take a picture or photograph of what you're actually dealing with. I'm lucky enough, I've got the video, plus I've done this before. So first of all, this clip's got to come off. This is the just a little retaining clip there. Might be a bit stiff, but pulls out of the centre of the carrier there, a little pin, and then it comes out like that. There we go, look. Always thick with brake dust, these things, so just be careful. And there's the clip. Remember the way that goes back in. Right, okay then, so looking from the back of the caliper, you've got two rubber plugs which you've got to take off. So you can probably see, let me try and prise them off. There we go, there's one there. And the other one's at the top. Just get a screwdriver in there and just lever them off. And that then reveals your next two fixings that take off your actual brake caliper itself. So these two bolts are T45. So we just want to crack them. They shouldn't be that tight, so there we go. Threads are probably going to be dry, as they are in this case. I'll just crack the other one first before we go any further. There we go. So we'll just whip these out. Right, you may have to prise them out from the back, because these are also your pins that your calipers slide onto. So you want to make sure when you put these back in, as you can see there, these are full of crap and grease that is solidified. These will stop your caliper from moving in and out, so do make sure you clean these pins up very well and re-grease them before you put them back in. And once you've pushed it out, as you can see, that's all solidified around there. That's all got to be cleaned off and lubricated before you put them back on. Now we should be able to lever off, but we've got such a big lip on this caliper here that I may not be able to do it. So you may have to do a bit of jiggery pokery. As you can see, I'm levering that piston back in now, just by levering on the caliper. And the piston's going back in now, enough for me to get it over that lip now. You want to be careful of your brake hoses here as well, because you don't want to be levering that. And what you could do actually is to take off your little clip there that holds your hose in, just to give you a bit more slack. And that little clip, it's a little C clip, just wiggle it out, as you can see there. You might have to bash that a bit to give you enough room. There we go, look. There we go, see, I've just pulled that out. That just gives us a bit more slack there without us kinking this hose. And then we're able to move that out of the way. You want to tie this up there, which I'll do in a second, but I'll just leave it there for a minute. In fact, I could probably get away with leaving it there. And as you can probably see, this was due new pads. As you can see, look how worn they are, look. Virtually right down on the hilt. That the outer pad, as you know, just pulls away. The inner pad there, as you can probably see, has actually got clips on which sit inside the actual piston, so you pull them out like that. Just leave that there for a second. And as you can see, these were long overdue a change. So that's that off. All that leaves me now is to undo these two main caliper bolts, which in this case are these two big E20 sockets. They may be a bit corroded. You might want to give them a bit of a clean up. As you can see, quite a tight fit on this one. Just giving it a tap on. And as I said, these could be very tight, so just be prepared that you might need a bit of assistance with these. God, that's tight. So I'm lucky enough to have a little lever here. I've got a breaker bar. I could have brought that out, but in fact, I'm going to get the breaker bar because they're very tight. Bear with me. I don't want to damage me little wrench. Right, okay, I've gone out and got my 3/8 breaker bar. Hopefully this should do the job. God, they're tight, aren't they? They're tight. Very tight. There we go. That's got it. That's what I say, if you've just got an average toolkit, you may struggle with this. Because a lot of this is probably being held on by brake dust. Right, now I've got that cracked. I'll get that off of there. Like that. And then get on that top one. As I say, just be aware that you may need to clean up these bolt heads. Don't breathe in this dust as well, folks. There we go. You just know this one's going to be tight as well, don't you? I need to get that round another. Right, let's give that a crack as well. Right, well, as you can probably see there, my breaker bar snapped. So that sort of thing can happen to you. So now I've got to find another solution. I'll see you in a minute. Right, well, this is the next day now. Things, as you probably know, when you're doing stuff in your drive and you are not in a garage environment, things can go wrong. You saw yesterday that we broke the 3/8 breaker bar on that big bolt. The reason why I used a 3/8 breaker bar, although I've got a 3/8 and 1/2 inch, is that I only had a 3/8 E20 socket. So I had to use what I'd got, and that's the way things go. So I thought I brought my breaker bars from Halford. So I went down Halford's in Boston, which is about probably 20-mile journey, and I took my breaker bar in and asked for the repair kit for the ends, and they had them there. But what they didn't have was the E20 socket in a 1/2 inch, because I really needed the bigger one. So I bought the repair kit, which basically consists of this little thing on the end, the little black thing. And when I went up to pay for it, I just measured it against my own breaker bar, because I did take my breaker bar in. And what I found out was that my breaker bar wasn't from Halfords. They do the repair kit, as I said to you, that little thing on the end, but it was for a different model. And when we looked at my breaker bar, it wasn't from Halfords, because I could have got it exchanged for free. So bearing in mind it was a different end, I had to actually give them that back. So then I asked them if they do a 3/8 breaker bar, and they didn't do them in Halfords. So I always thought they did do them, but that's another story. So anyway, that means that I've now come 20 miles. I haven't got a 1/2 inch E20 socket, and I still haven't got a breaker bar to replace the one that I'd broken. I had to then drive another 30 miles to Lincoln from Boston and try Machine Mart, because Machine Mart, I thought I got the breaker bars from there. It turns out I didn't, but they did have a 3/8 breaker bar, so I was able to replace my original one. And they also had a set of E10 to E20 1/2 inch sockets. So now I've got that set now, which is what I've never had before. I do have my own personal 1/2 inch breaker bar, which I would have used in the first place. So don't leave your comments saying, oh, you should never use a 3/8 on a big bolt like that. Well, I know that. You can probably see the difference there between the two ends on the breaker bars there. That was the bolt I was trying to undo. We managed to get one out with that. As you can see, it's actually smaller. The head of the shaft there is actually smaller than the bolt. The 1/2 inch one shouldn't be a problem, as you can see. So we should have used this in the first place, but I had to use what I had, and that's what happens in this scenario. And it did undo the first bolt, as you saw there. Right, now with that said, let's carry on. There's the 1/2 inch E20. Let's get this nut cracked. Right, okay, so let's get this on there. There we go. And we've got a 1/2 inch one now. God, that is tight. You see how tight that is, look. Whew. It has cracked it, but it's still blinking tight. Look at that. It's actually turning on the disc, look. Tell you what I'm going to do, I'm going to get some WD-40, put it on there. Give it some lube and work it in and out and see what that does. So as I say, you can see how important it is to have at least a good selection of tools. If you're doing this sort of job, you know, you can come across problems. You know way would you have been able to get this off without a breaker bar. Definitely no way. And we're not out of the woods yet. Because this bolt still could give on us. Look at that. And that is tight. Let's try again. Now I've undone it a bit more, put a bit of lube in that joint there, hoping it can penetrate the bolt at all, you know. And you imagine if that bolt snapped. We're getting there now. Right, let me undo this and I'll come back to you. Better. You'd have trouble even with an impact gun to have undone that. Right, let's get that out. There's the bolt there. These are actually thread locked in as well, so there you go. So that's the carrier off now, as you can see. That can all be cleaned up. Most important parts for this is the bits where the actual pads run on. Make sure they're very clean, but we'll give that a sandblast while we're here. Right, okay, so all we should have now is the little Allen key at the bottom there holding the disc on. Let's just undo that. That definitely shouldn't be tight. So let's just get that out. Right, there's that. It's only a little plug. And hopefully, maybe with a little tap. I've got a copper mallet here. There we go. Lots of crap there. There's our disc off. and that's all that was holding it on, as you can see there. You want to give all this a good clean up as well before you put the new disc back on. Clean this whole area up there, and also the calipers, just be wire brushed down. We want to look at the seal around the outside to make sure that's not perished at all, which it hasn't, and it's sitting in place. And give that a good clean up with a wire brush, and then it's a matter of just reassembly. So I'm just going to clean up them bits now. You haven't really got to see that, and I'll see you in a minute. Right, here we are. I've just given this a quick sandblast. As you can probably see, it's a lot cleaner than what it was. And these are the bolts that were ultra tight in there, as you can probably see. I've given them a wire brush down, and you can now see that they're travelling nice and free. Now, we could have tried and put them back as they was, and they would have been very tight, and there's a good chance you could have buggered up your thread. So just shows you clean everything off, make it get as clean as possible. You won't get it as clean as that with a wire brush. The bit we're interested in is where the pads actually run on, which is them little grooves down there, as you can probably see, and they're totally spotless now, so I'm happy with that. And we're also going to be putting on some thread lock on this, on them bolts, which it had on there originally. There's different types. I've got the blue one. Right, okay, so I've also cleaned up these two pins, as you can probably see there. Again, so they're going to be running nice and smoothly, so the calipers can move in and out nicely. So I'm happy with that as well. I've given the caliper a wire brush, and also around this hub here, and just cleaned out this dust plate as well. And just to make things a little bit easier when you put things on or maintain and service them again, I'm just going to run a thin smear, only a thin smear of oil around that inside lip there, because quite often what you'll find is that when you take a disc off, it's seized onto there with rust. So just putting a little thin smear of grease on there ensures that if these have got to come off again, it'll be nice and easy. Right, I've got my new pads and disc here. I've got a disc for the other side as well, but this one's for this side. I mean, I should have checked these when I first got them, but I'm quite happy with my supplier. But I have had stuff sent wrong before, so do make sure you've got the right disc for your motor and pads, because there's so many variations nowadays. Right, so these discs get covered in storage oil, so you don't want to just whack them straight on. There is a film of oil all over them, so you want to get some cleaner, preferably carb spray or brake cleaner. Give them a good squirt, clean down, and get all that residual oil off the discs themselves before you actually fit them. Otherwise your brakes won't work. Do both sides. There we go, all around the edge as well. There we go, so that's our new disc. I can see from the old one that it is comparable in all ways, so I know I've definitely got the right disc. Right, so that goes in there, like that, and then we'll just do this up in position. Again, you haven't got to go over tight with this. It's only a locating pin. There we go. Everything else lines up there nicely. Right, okay, that's that. Just leave that there for the second. We're going to deal with that in a second. We've got to push the piston back in again. But first of all, I also want to check these new pads. They have got a seal on them, so they've not been opened or played about with, which I'm going to break now. So one will have a clip on and one won't. Again, belt and braces, just make sure that they do match as these do. These are the anti-squirrel plates on the back of these, so people used to put copper slip on the back. You don't really need to do that nowadays, although some people still do it. As you can see the difference in the pads there, look. Totally non-existent virtually. And again, the second pad, exactly the same, anti-squirrel plates still on the pad, and I'm happy that they are the same pads. So here's our carrier. So as you can see, they come in nice and easy now, look. Don't make life hard for yourself and omit to clean them bolts. You're just making life hard for yourself. And again, I've got the thread lock here, which I'm going to put on these bolts. Just put it on one side and it will seep round. Make sure you do shake this up because it does tend to settle, and that will work its way around the threads when we put it in. Which is that way. Get the bolts in from the back so you won't be able to see this. Right, as you can see, that one bolt has gone in nicely. Just get the second bolt, which was a little bit awkward, but we can find it all right. And that's how they should have undone. But they didn't, as you well know. Just taking up the slack. There we go, like that. Just nip them up with our socket. And I'm just going to finish them off with the breaker bar. So I urge you to do these up to a correct torque setting if you don't know what you're doing. And for that, check the specifications. Right, well, I've got some copper slip grease here, and the only place I put the copper slip grease is in these little channels there, which is where the little tangs on the pads run, and that just stops them binding and making them sort of slip a lot better. Don't get it on the pads here, will you? Or on the discs. The pad on the inner one clips into there, as you know, so that has to sit in there. But what you have to do first of all is to push the piston back in, because it's popped out again. Now you may want to just lift the bonnet up and just check the reservoir, because as fluid leaves and this piston comes further out, the fluid automatically drops down as well. So technically speaking, if no one's touched that, you got to push this back in. All it's going to do is bring it back up to the level it was. But you don't know whether or not someone, while it's been low like this, has had a look and topped it up. And that's when it could overflow, when you could push back. So I'm just going to check the reservoir and put a cloth around it. Take the lid off, just put a cloth around it just to make sure. So over here is our brake fluid reservoir. And I can see the level is probably about halfway up. So we should be okay, but you never know. You could come over here and find that while them brakes have been very, very low and the pistons have come out, someone may have come here and topped this and brought it right up to there. You don't know. So you'll hear some people say you don't need to do this. You hear some people say that you do need to do this. That's the reason why you do need to check this, in case someone has come in here while the brakes are low, the pads, the pistons are out, and someone might have come in here and actually topped this up. You don't know. So that's why you check this. I'm just going to put that there just as a matter of caution. And now I can push the piston back in, knowing that that's not going to come up too high, I hope. Again, many ways to push these in. Some you have to wind in, some you have to have a special tool, some are reverse wound in. I'm just going to press these in with a big pair of grips there, because that's all you need to do with these ones. Just push them back in and they'll go back in. There we go, she's moving. There we go. All the way back in. There she goes. So I'll just clip this back in to the piston. Like that. And the other one will be automatically seated that way around in there. Like that, and this hopefully should fall back on if we squeezed it in enough, which I think we have. There we go. There we go. Got it in place now. So what we've got now, as you know, is our 2 pins to go in, and I'm going to use a little piece of white grease. You can use moly grease. Don't use copper slip. It has got some abrasive properties to it, and this hopefully should ensure that these pins run freely. And as a result of that, the calipers will return to their original position once you finish braking. Right, let's put these back in. They go in where them rubber boots are, if you remember rightly. And then put the rubber caps on, and then that's it. So I'm just going to put my foot on the brake, just to make sure everything's seated down correctly. Yep, pedals come right up. I'm happy with that. And you can't see me, but I'm around at the master cylinder now, and I'm just putting the cap back on there. Everything is okay there, so there's no problems whatsoever there. Just removing the cloth. One final thing to do is just to make sure that you've got your safety clip in. There we go, get in there. That's it. Make sure you've got that in. And also don't forget to replace your little clip. There we go, that goes in there like that. And just give that a tap in. There we go. That puts that back in. And also the little clip for the sensor cable as well. There we go. That's all back to normal. Now put the wheel on. There we go, that's what we're looking at. Brand new discs. And I think we can safely say that that is the brakes replaced and the discs on the front of this Vauxhall Signum. So I'm just going to clear up now and I'll see you in a second. Right, that's it, that's one side done. I'm going to do the other side now. You haven't got to see that, it'll be exactly the same. So I've left them little bits in, as I always do when you come up against problems and what could happen. Someone said you probably should never have used a 3/8 breaker bar. Well, I only had an E20 socket in a 3/8, so it undone the first nut, all right, the second one it snapped, that's my problem. That could happen to you too, that's why I leave these little bits in. Anyway, thanks very much, hope to see you in the next video, and until then, bye for now.